do you think?
The world is sliding into a new nuclear moment. European security leaders now openly admit that the global order designed to restrain great power conflict is breaking down. At the Oslo Security Conference, leaders warned that international rules no longer restrain powerful states, and that security is increasingly shaped by raw power, not legal frameworks. This shift is bringing nuclear deterrence back to the center of strategic thinking in Europe.
You know, there's an argument that actually, you know, the international rules-based order has been an illusion. You know, it has been always law of the jungle, wherever who has the might takes what they want. But even in jungle, you have, you know, animals cooperating.
Yep.
And I really see that, you know, we are in this situation where we have to really develop this international law further with those countries who want the rules-based order. And what is really lacking, because all of us want that there wouldn't be any wars. So what is lacking is the UN Charter is very good. I mean, the principles there are very good, but it lacks the accountability part, really. What happens if you breach those rules?
That warning is colliding with a hard deadline. The New START Treaty, the last remaining nuclear arms pact between Russia and the United States, is set to expire, removing all caps on the two largest nuclear arsenals for the first time in decades. The treaty limited deployed warheads and delivery systems and allowed inspections designed to prevent miscalculation. Its collapse risks opening a new phase of unconstrained nuclear competition.
To avoid provoking a further strategic arms race and to ensure an acceptable level of predictability and restraint, we believe it is justified to attempt to maintain the status quo established by the New START Treaty during this rather turbulent period. Therefore, Russia is prepared to continue adhering to the central quantitative limitations of the New START Treaty for 1 year after February 5, 2026. We believe this measure will only be viable if the United States acts in a similar manner.
Europe's northern flank is already living with the nuclear reality. Norway's Prime Minister says Russian nuclear forces are positioned close to NATO territory in the high north, turning the Arctic into a front line of nuclear deterrence. European leaders warn that nuclear risks are no longer abstract, but part of daily security calculations along NATO's borders.
When I met President Trump first time, I said this to him, looked him in his eyes and said it's important for a Norwegian Prime Minister to see a US President in the eyes and say, 100 kilometers from my border is the world's largest nuclear arsenal. And it is not directed against me, Mr. President, but against you. And it makes a difference that we monitor those submarines. We know when they leave port. We know when they test their new weapon systems, and we share it with you and we collaborate on monitoring that.
Moscow says the world is about to become more dangerous. The Kremlin argues that without New START, predictability between the two largest nuclear powers will collapse. At the same time, Washington has been non-committal about extending the treaty, while China has rejected limits on its smaller but growing nuclear arsenal, raising fears of a three-way nuclear arms race without rules, inspections, or caps. European leaders warn that nuclear norms themselves are weakening. At Oslo, officials acknowledged that the psychological barrier against nuclear escalation is eroding as more states view nuclear weapons as tools of leverage rather than weapons of last resort. This shift is unfolding alongside the collapse of arms control treaties that once anchored strategic stability.
If I may add to this, this is also the sign of our times, that that we have this thinking when it comes to a lot of countries in the world, that whether we need a nuclear weapon, which is very dangerous development, because so far, it was the non-proliferation, and it was in everybody's interest, really. But now, and it started with Russia's war, because then a lot of countries saw that actually threatening with the nuclear weapon works. You get to walk away with what you want,
Yeah.
and okay, so there's a thinking, all those countries who have appetite for their neighbors' territories is like, okay, we should have a nuclear weapon, because then we get what we want, and all those.
The expiry of New START may not immediately change the number of deployed warheads, but European leaders warn the direction of travel is clear. With treaties collapsing, inspections halted, and nuclear deterrence returning to center stage, the world is entering a period of unmanaged nuclear competition. The new normal for global security is no longer restraint, but escalation risk.